Hello everyone, I hope you're doing really well and thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'm going off on a hike. I don't really know what to expect, but it's a beautiful day. Unfortunately lots of blue sky at the moment, but we'll see how things go as the day progresses. What I would like to talk about in today's video is my favourite Nikon Z lenses for landscape photography. I use two lenses for my landscape photography, and I think they're the perfect setup, the perfect combination of lenses for me. So I want to explain why that is, and I'm also going to talk about how my approach to the ideal set of lenses has changed over the years. If I went back a few years regarding my landscape photography, I definitely carried a very different set of lenses. In fact, I carried more lenses. So I want to talk a bit about that, and I think it should be quite an interesting video. But for now, I'm going to carry on and see what the weather brings, see what the hike brings, hopefully some nice photographs. And it would be great if I use a couple of lenses today, but we'll see what opportunity the landscape presents to me. So I see a nice little spot just up ahead. I'm going to stop for a minute or two, have a little rest, have a drink, and I'm going to talk about my history regarding landscape photography lenses, what I liked to use in the past and why. And I just want to quickly mention that throughout this video, when I'm talking in terms of focal length, I'm talking in full frame terms. I've owned a number of different cameras in the past, a number of different full frame, APS-C size sensors as well, but for the purpose of the video I'm going to keep everything in full frame terms. So it really is a beautiful day. It's just amazing, lots of sunlight, but unfortunately with that, even though it's very late in the day and it's quite early in the year, there's a lot of heat, haze, atmospheric conditions going on, and for that reason the camera has stayed in my backpack so far. Now you can get that sort of haze at any time of year, you can get it in winter, but even though it's early in the year, I've just seen so much more of it this year than I ever have in previous years. I'm not quite sure why, but that's how it is. But anyway, I'm going to continue in my hike after I do this little section. I want to talk about what was my approach to landscape photography lenses going back a few years. I've changed my approach in recent years, but for many years I had a favoured approach, and that was to have, I guess you could say, the holy trinity of landscape photography lenses. So my most used one was a 24-70. I took most of my images by far using that lens, a lot of my favourite images. If that wasn't long enough, I had my telephoto, a 70-200mm lens, and I absolutely loved that. I think something covering that longer focal length is a lot of the time almost essential for a landscape photographer. And then at the other end I had an ultra wide angle, so something like a 16-35, and that was primarily used when I needed to go to the ultra wide angle focal lengths. Otherwise I'd be using my 24-70 for the parts that overlapped. And then at some point I would replace that with a sort of a 20mm prime, and that was because I didn't do too much ultra wide angle photography. It's not something that I'm particularly fond of. That may change. I may do a project ultra wide angle just for something to keep me occupied and interested, trying a few new things, but I used ultra wide angle for a lot of years, or had one for a lot of years, but I didn't use it a lot because I'm not really a fan of that type of photography. For me, my photography is all about just trying to keep or capture images and have a final product that looks very much like I see it when I'm on location. Obviously if I use a telephoto and take something far away, I'm going to see it bigger and more detail than I can with my eye, but what I'm getting at is that the ultra wide angles can really distort things. So I mean, they can really exaggerate foregrounds, anything in the distance, say a hill or mountain, which I really like the look of and it's big and impressive as I look at it. The ultra wide angle focal length can really shrink that down. So for those reasons I was never really a fan of it. I carried one, and it was more just really when I felt 24mm wasn't wide enough, I'd go ultra wide angle. But But yeah, it's not something I really used enough to justify having one, and that was simply because I didn't really like the look of the images that much. But photography is very personal. That's just my story, that's how I see things, and my view regarding the ideal set of lenses for me is now changed, so I'll talk about that as the video goes on. So I'm making good progress, and I'm headed up this peak behind me here, and I'm hoping, although it's probably going to be clear skies, there's a few maybe very subtle clouds forming off in the distance, but although it may be clear skies, I'm just hoping the light's going to get a bit better. There's certainly nothing to block the sun, so there is some potential even though I don't have any clouds in the sky. But moving on to my new setup of landscape photography lenses, I've still not taken any images yet, but as you probably gathered from what I said in the last section, if I didn't make it clear, what I've done is drop the ultra wide angle, so my lenses now begin at 24mm, and for me that's often wide enough. It's very seldom that I feel I need wider. Of course, other people may have an absolutely different view, and that is absolutely fine. We can all make our own decisions regarding our photography, but for me, it's very rare that I want to go below 24mm. Often I'm zoomed in a bit more than that, but I'll talk about my first lens. I need to make a bit more progress and see which lens I'm going to use to take my first image. So I'm all set up here to take my first shot, and the light is still quite bright, but I think it quite suits the scene that I'm taking here, and I'm not actually sure of the exact time, but I'm probably about an hour 20 minutes to sunset, I think, so it's not extremely harsh, but because of the direction that I'm looking in and the sun's off in front of me but to my left, it's still quite bright. And we've got this lovely layers of land moving off to the distant hills, lots of layers. I can see some of those, I think you call them wind turbines, gathering energy off in the distance. There's very little going on in the sky, and I'm actually using the polarizer, so the sun is not at the complete optimal angle to maximize the benefits of that, but I'm just using it a little bit, which is really helping just bring out a little bit of detail in those distant hazier areas, and I quite like what it's doing to the landscape nearer to me. But yeah, it's a beautiful scene. Just there's no one around. I'm sat on the edge of this hill looking for miles, and yeah, it's really nice to be up here. So I'm going to set off the timer and quickly get my hand to the front just to block the sun that's coming in. I don't want any lens flare, and I think that's going to be a nice atmospheric shot. Not a lot going on in the sky, but arguably it suits the scene. And I'm taking this with the first lens that I want to talk about today. This is my favourite lens for landscape photography. Possibly my favourite lens of all time for landscape photography. This is the Nikon Z 24 to 120mm. It's one of the S-line range of Nikon's lenses. So I think it's got better coatings, probably better corner sharpness, a few other benefits and so on. What a fantastic lens. And why do I love this? Well, I always loved the 24 to 70 in the past on a full frame camera or the equivalent on an APS-C sensor. Fantastic, my main used focal length range, but often 70 was too short. So if you're out with one lens to save weight, and that was my lens, a 24 to 70, I've got no option. I don't have a longer lens with me. If I do have the 70 to 200 with me in the past, I could switch to it. Sometimes it's a bit of a nuisance switching lenses. If it's raining or snowing or dust blowing around, it's not ideal. You don't always want to do that. And also if it's a fleeting moment, stunning light hitting the peak of a mountain or a rainbow or whatever, sometimes you miss the shot changing lenses. So this lens here, I change lenses a lot less. It's the main lens that sits in my camera most of the time for landscapes. So if I'm a bit short at 70, I've got this. And interestingly here, I think I'm just past the 85mm marker on the lens. I could zoom in a bit more if I was wanting to take other compositions. It's just such a fantastic focal length range. And lenses have been good for a lot of years, but I think there's always technological advancements going on, and these Z mount lenses are fantastic. And I think if you'd spoke to me many years ago, I was using a 24 to 70 f2.8 lens, you know, one of the best lenses that I could get for that particular camera. When you looked at longer focal lengths, trying to cover more focal lengths in one lens, I think there's like a 24 to 105 and so on, all the reviews showed you are losing a bit of quality and so on, and it kind of put you off. I'm not saying that was the case with every lens for every manufacturer, but it was often the thought when you try and cover such a large focal length range with one lens, you could be making compromises. With this lens here, I think it's fantastic. I mean, I shoot all across the focal length range, don't feel I'm losing any quality. Someone could offer me a 24 to 70 f2.8 and I say no thank you, I'm very happy with what I've got. It produces fantastic images, great prints, and I just love it. It's so versatile. For me it's subjective, it's not too big, it's not too heavy, and I just love this lens. So yeah, I'm really pleased with it. Great image quality, so versatile, and it lets me go out with one lens quite a lot of the time. But I do feel I need a longer focal length at times, considerably above 120, and that's what my other lens covers, and I'll talk about that next. So I've reached the top of my climb and it's fantastic. I can see for miles all around, not a soul in sight, and it's really nice. The light is quite beautiful but also very atmospheric, sort of hazy off in the distance. And I would say I've got probably about 45-50 minutes maximum before the sun dips below distant hills. So even though it's that close to, getting close to sunset, you could say, it's not like the light is just hitting the whole landscape and offering crystal clarity. There's still a bit of distant haze, but I quite like it. It's quite atmospheric. So unless things change dramatically, I'm taking my last shot with a 24 to 120mm lens today, and I'm not far past 70mm for this shot. But I'm looking down at this beautiful expanse of water, some distant hills and mountains, and there's a lot of light and a lot of shadow, and we're just starting to get a little bit of a golden glow off in the distance just above the hill line, which helps because there are zero clouds off in that direction. There's very few clouds, a few behind the camera, but yeah, not in the direction that I'm going to be shooting. So again, I'm using the polarizer. The sun is almost at 90 degrees for this shot, and it's just helping bring out a little bit of detail in the distance and taking just a hint of glare off the water that's in front of me. So I'm not turning the polarizer fully again, it's just turning it just enough to make a little bit of impact to the shot and get it looking the way I want. So the composition is set up. It's looking quite nice. It's atmospheric again. I think I just accidentally took a shot there, but never mind. I'm going to set off the timer and then just block the sun so I don't get lens flare. I'll have a quick look at it with no on-screen display settings and so on in the way. And it looks really nice. It's quite atmospheric. I'm quite pleased with that. But now it's time to switch to my other lens. So I've now got a set of 2 lenses for landscape photography. Often I'll go out with just this one, but often if I'm not sure what to expect, I'll take both. So I've got all the focal range covered that I think I could need. So I'll get that lens on the camera. We'll talk a bit about it, and hopefully I'll get some shots with it. So I've now switched lens, and first of all, this is a landscape video. The camouflage is more protection really. I do wildlife with this lens as well. I can be scuffing past trees, bushes, lying on rocks, sand, grass and so on. So this just offers a bit of protection, but that's why it's on the lens. But this is the Nikon Z 100 to 400mm lens, a fantastic lens to have in your kit, your range of kit for doing landscape photography. It's an S-line lens. I spoke about the benefits of that early on. And previously in days gone by where you had 24 to 70, I've now got 24 to 120 in fantastic quality. And if that's not enough, I've got 100 all the way to 400. So similar with the 24 to 70 being a little bit short at times. Sometimes 200, it can be a bit short in landscape photography. And now that the sun is almost dipping behind the distant hills, the heat haze is gone. I can use the longer reach on this lens, looking at little parts of the landscape. There's some beautiful stuff all around me, and just isolate scenes a bit more than you can do if you max out at 200mm. So it's fantastic, very versatile, and it doesn't always have to be things that's great distances away. It can just, that extra focal length can just help you isolate scenes. It could be a lone tree just across in a distant hillside, whatever it is. But I find this to be a fantastic lens, and in partnership with the other lens I've spoke about today, it's my personal ideal combination. And I just want to quickly touch on, I did have 2 copies of the 24 to 200mm lens. Again, that is a very versatile lens, could capture so many great images. But when I purchased that lens, I don't think this lens existed, and neither did the 24 to 120. So when these come out, I definitely felt it was worth switching to these. In my opinion, being S-line lenses and doing my own testing, they offer better sharpness in the corners. The 24 to 200mm lens is pretty good and offers great value for money, but at certain focal lengths I did feel there was a bit of a problem in the corners. When I'm sending out large prints to people it's paying, I just was a little bit uneasy about it. And also these offer better combat against chromatic aberration, the 2 S-line lenses. So that's the reason I'm using these. But yeah, I love this lens. It's in the bag a lot, not always. Sometimes 24 to 120 is enough, as I spoke about. But yeah, if I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what to expect, I'll take both lenses. I think they're great. It's a perfect combination for me. So before that sun dips behind the mountains, I'm going to have a look around, quite possibly shoot handheld with this lens, and see if I can get a few nice little compositions to finish off the day. So the sun is now just about touching the distant hill line, so it's about to lose the light in all the landscape. So I'm going to hike down. Probably the last bit will be in the dark, but yeah, it's a beautiful evening anyway, not too much wind, and yeah, it should be enjoyable even on the way down. But I hope you found that video interesting. The last few shots that I showed were all taken with a 100 to 400, and it is really handy just having that extra bit of reach at times to get the compositions in camera the way you want them. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you've found it interesting, maybe took something out of the video that you can incorporate into your own photography, and yeah, I hope to see you in my next one.